This is beautiful. What is that, velvet?
Peace and love is the key.
You are now about to experience the J&J Life MA'AT Podcast with your host, Reya'Sekhmet.
But my name combines Rhea, which means a connection to Ra.
J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast. J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast. Please
Smash that like button. Peace and love is the key.
Abi Fahodie, baby to me, Abi Wan. Or in other words, what's up, family? I'm Reya'Sekhmet, coming with the questions, the curiosity, and the courage to learn from my elders, and our builders. Thank you for tuning into the J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast, a space where we study and protect the cultural memory that guards our future. And even though I'm only 9 years old, I've come to understand that responsibility comes with consciousness. So, family, today is special. We're sitting with a man whose work has shifted conversations across the African world. He's none of our truth tellers, a builder for our people, and the executive producer and director of the Hapi Film and the Hapi Movement. So without further ado, please welcome Brother Taaqiy Grant to the J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast. Please, Brother Taaqiy, what's good with you, fam?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing over there? Peace,
All
family.
is well.
Ashe. And shout out to Sister Felicia and Brother Hassan for the great work they're doing within the Hapi Movement. I need to check in with the conscious locks, Baba Razar. How are you doing on this podcast today? What do, Baba?
What it do? You know, all is well. Dua Reya'Sekhmet. And peace and blessing to you, Brother Taaqiy. You know, I'm truly grateful to share this moment with you. You know what? We're truly grateful to be able to share this moment with you. And before we always get started, you know, we have a thing that we do where we give reverence to the ancestors, the elders and the elders for all they have done and are doing. And with that, brother, we salute you. Much gratitude for you taking the time out to spend with our young host, you know. So, Reya'Sekhmet, with that, the energy is right. I say, let's get into it.
I just gotta say, I love this. I love what I'm seeing. I love the intergenerational connectedness. So important. And yeah, you guys are winning, and I'm happy to be here and share with you and the family anything that I have, and we keep moving this thing forward. And again, salute to you guys. You know, the young sister, the king. You know what I'm saying? I believe is grandfather and granddaughter, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, this is very powerful. So shout out to y'all. Salute.
We appreciate that. Reya'Sekhmet appreciate that.
And guess what, Baba?
What's up?
We got Brother Taaqiy on the J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast.
Got to get that money rub in, right?
Brother Taaqiy, I'm 9 years old, and my view of the world is still forming. But I know it will continue to expand because one of my goals is to travel to the motherland, specifically Kemet and the Nile Valley region. I still to ask you, before the films, documentaries, podcasts, even before the Hapi Movement, there was a young version of you trying to make sense of life. What would you say the world was like when you were growing up? Basically, who was Taaqiy Grant before the world knew who you are?
Who is Taaqiy Grant, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So, you know, it's interesting. And when I see you guys, it takes me to a time when my younger years, when I was surrounded by consciousness.
Yeah.
I may not have always wanted to go in that direction, but it was in my home from as early as about 4 years old. And Farrakhan was playing, pictures of Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X was on the wall. You know, it was just always something happening. Books are laying around. In fact, and I tell this story all the time, the book on your top shelf right there was just always laying on the kitchen table, Destruction of Black Civilization. So that right there is one of the turning points. You know, that book was just always laying around. It was my stepfather's. He had that book and many others. And that's the type of stuff that was just in the house from as long as I can remember, just kind of just there. Stolen Legacy, Destruction of Black Civilization, books like that. So before I even got to reading that book, I was just surrounded by, like I said, different various forms of imagery. And imagery is very important because the young sister there touched on the Nile Valley. And we got to think in terms of development and what our ancestors was doing in the Nile, right? Let's take, for instance, like a person like King Tut, who lived around maybe the 17th century BC, was inspired by the pyramids, which was 1,000 years before him, and his ancestors. In Kemet, there were various different forms of what we call the Hall of the Ancestors, essentially on walls or temple facades where they would put the names of all the kings up until that point. And for a young person coming along who was inspiring to be great, would see that and get that inspiration. And those are the things that are important in terms of development. So for me as a young person, I was fortunate to be in a village and be in an environment where there was Black powerful imagery around, right? And this is the key. We take those things for granted in terms of just having a picture on the wall or a book around. And those things shape the minds and development for our young people. I also have to mention that one of my close friends' father was the executive director of one of the largest cultural centers here in New York at that time, the African Poetry Theater. So as long as I can remember, I was just there, not necessarily paying attention what was going on, but just there with my friend, being 8 years old, around, because we were like in the 3rd grade when we first started hooking up and hanging out together. So pretty much around the age of young Sekhmet here. So we were doing our thing in there, running up and down the stairs, playing around, not really being serious about it.
Right.
That influence was there. You know what I'm saying? The foundation was there. And I take that and I connect it to, again, a place like Kemet, and just why they were so intentional about establishing or, erecting the temples, the statues. Young people walking by, they would see it and be like, oh, that was such and such. He defeated such and such. Or that was such and such. She did such and such. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're in an environment like that, it just creates greatness. So again, I applaud what you guys are doing, because you're doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Ashe. Wow, that was powerful, right?
Yeah, powerful. Thank you for taking us back. Hearing of how your early journey helped me understand how the foundation came together for you. And when I listen to your story, I hear someone who was already searching and questioning the things around you, searching for something bigger for that matter.
That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brother Taaqiy, you had the chance to go to the African Poetry Theater, founded by John Watusi. I've come to know that most children don't get exposed to a place like that. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper.
Just a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
How deep? Deeper than Atlantis. That's a shout out to Brother Jay. We had Brother Jay on the show, and we had a powerful discussion with Brother Jay. And I told him I was gonna get him, so that was my shot at Brother Jay.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper, as I want to know more about the environment for being in that building. What vivid memory do you have that you could share about the building, the hallways, the wall art, and the atmosphere?
Yeah, the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, and I believe those details can help shape a young mind.
Wow. So, just looking back at what it was, I'm going back some time and some of the vivid memories. One of the most vivid memories there, let me just say, well, there's quite a few, right? So a minute ago, you asked about travel. And John Watusi was the one who started me in that journey. Mm-hmm. He was also my first mentor in doing pilgrimages to the continent. And the first one, in fact, or the first two, in fact, he actually structured for me. So there was a huge development process there in terms of a rites of passage and also institutional knowledge. And so here's the thing that we need to understand as a community is that we can't gatekeep, right?
Right.
We need to be open and honest with each other and be willing to pass information along. Other communities do this very well, right? Intergenerationally, they do this very well because they understand this. They understand that they got to make sure it continues. And in fact, in that book, Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams speaks of the generational, I'm going to say curse, in a sense, with Africans versus other communities, because the way he phrases it is that when we plan for today. When they plan for tomorrow and beyond, right? That is the mindset. But it wasn't always like that with Africans, because again, in the now, you can clearly see that they planned for today and generations and generations and generations. That's why ancient Kemet was the longest lasting civilization, because they were into forecasting and foreseeing what was going to happen tomorrow. So memories of the African poetry theater, definitely that's one. And one of the most other vivid memories is, and keep in mind too, all of our Black scholars would come in there and speak. That was one of the places, like kind of on the tour. They got to go to the African poetry theater. So early days, remember meeting Milana Karenga, Dr. Clark there, Gil Noble from Like It Is. But the most pivotal and important meeting was when I met Dr. Leonard Jeffries there.
Okay.
Because that was one of the turning points for me. At this time, this had to be the early 2000s, and maybe 10 years, maybe about seven years or so after he was dealing with the infamous court cases here in New York City. And one of the things I remember during that time is just how heralded he was in my house, and everybody in the household. Dr. Jeffries, like, they're really excited about him standing up, and not only for himself, but for his people. Mm-hmm. And that is a big thing, particularly, you know, in this day and age. So he became a hero to me, like overnight. It was a hero. It was like, this person was, at that time, I was actually fully entrenched in consciousness. But to see him do his thing was like, wow. So on that day, I just happened to come down there probably to see my friend. I wasn't going down there to hear Dr. J talk. But when I got there, he was there, and we just started speaking after the meeting. And I remember just kind of showing him some pictures. I was already traveling back and forth to the Nile, things like that. And he was kind of interested in some of the things I was working on. And one of the things I asked him, this is the part that really impressed me the most. I was like, hey, because at this time I was really looking for someone to sit with to study Medu Neter. And Sister Akhet really wasn't doing it on a wide scale anymore. And it just like was kind of hard to find a teacher. He said, just give me your information. And if I hear something, I'll call you. So, you know, you don't really, when someone says something like that, you're like, oh, all right. You don't really like say, I'm gonna wait by the phone and you know, wait for that call. But maybe 6 months later, I come home from work, and at the time I had an answering machine. Everybody had answering machines in the house. I think I might have had a cell phone, but I gave him the house phone. I played the answer machine, and it's his wife, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, giving me instructions on what a class was, which was in their house at that time. So we used to have our early Medu Neter classes in their house, and it was such an important time because it really opened my mind up to, and basically helped me connect the historical aspect with the cultural aspect of the Nile. And Mfudisi Jehutimes was the instructor at the time. So that was a very, very powerful experience for me during that time, of being able to really, really immerse myself into the culture, understanding, listening, understanding, learning the language would really, really put things in their proper perspective. So that was such an important time. And also that 6 months really kind of blew my mind, because I totally forgot about it. I totally forgot that we talked about it and everything like that. And I was really impressed that it was an honor that they, you know, remembered me and reached out to me and called me. And you know, I remember just sitting there at the kitchen table with maybe like 5 of us, 5 students. You know, it was very small, very intimate group. And that really kind of helped my development.
Yeah. You said a lot of powerful names right there. And we're going to get to that, right? We're going to get to that, right, Reya'Sekhmet? Yeah.
And wow. I don't want to get ahead. I'm going to let y'all ask y'all questions, because yes, there are a lot of powerful names, but that was an introduction to a whole new world, which, you know, I'll let you guys, you know what I mean? Go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder. So go ahead.
No, you good. You good. I mean, she's been doing, you know, a lot of people don't realize that when Reya'Sekhmet came on the scene, you want me to tell it? Okay. When Reya'Sekhmet came on the scene, we saw something in her when she came to us when she was 6 years old. My divine reflection and we were watching Baba Kaba do his thing one time at JB's bookstore. He was giving a lecture, and she was off playing with her cousins, her little cousins at the time, 6 years old, running around. And she saw Kaba on the TV, and she just sat down between my wife and I, and she watched. And you know, Baba Kaba can go, you know, so we ended about 3 hours, right? But she sat down there and she watched the whole thing, you know, to the point where a few days later, when she came back to our house, she started talking to my wife and I, and not only was she remembering what Baba Kaba was saying, she was putting it in context. And it was like, well, wait a minute, you 6. How are you doing that? So she came to me in this conversation, was like, Baba, I wanna spread my knowledge to the world in real time. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. She said, I want to spread my knowledge to the world in real time. So what she did was she drew what she called her logo on a piece of paper, and I still got it. And from that drawing, we put that image to what a logo is on our YouTube page now. That was her. She created that.
Wow.
You know, so everything that you see, her preparation for all of her interviews, her research is all done by her. She gives me cues. And so that's why I always say that I'm just thankful to even be on the show, sitting here with my granddaughter and us doing it this way, because, you know, we run an institution, and the information that we try to bring forth is right in line with what you're doing over there at with the Hapi Movement. And so it was just like a blessing when you decided that you wanted to so grace us with your presence. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of, you know, who Reya'Sekhmet is and what she brings to the table. And just like when Baba Kaba and others, you know, actually came on the show, they were amazed on how she is able to articulate herself, how she's quick with it, how she remembers, and how she can take that information, process it, and give it right back to you with explanation in detail. So that's a little bit of Reya'Sekhmet's journey, and she can tell you her, you know, in her own words, but I get excited, you know, so I kind of just
You should. As well
tone
as
up a little bit, but
yeah, no, absolutely. And let me just add this here. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice in the matter. You know, we have to, when we see God, we have to recognize God. We have to understand what the language of spirit looks like, and I'd be able to identify it. And when you see things like this, because I've seen, before you even reached out to me, I saw some of the videos. And I was
okay.
like, wow, who's this young lady? And you know, I was already kind of, you know, curious and amazed, and you know, a whole lot of adjectives. And I was like, wow, you know, this is something really interesting. Then you reached out, and I was like, okay, you know, at that point, you know, you kind of understanding what it is that we do in this community, what it is that we should be doing, and how we have to work together, how we have to form alliances. And as we say, in the full spirit of the Hapi movement, in the value system of the 4 pillars of Hapi, one of them being unity, and just tying that lotus and papyrus plant, what did that really look like, and what did this, and what stood above it, and what stood on
Right.
it. It's understanding just how they, again, our ancestors were very clear. You know, you ain't gonna be able to do nothing if you ain't got no unity. If you ain't figure out how to work together, you can forget about it. You know what I mean? And these are things we've lost. So, and we've also lost the importance of, and I say this again, of, you know, working together intergenerationally. We've lost that. Even in this community, we've lost that.
Yeah.
And this is why we're kind of always starting from scratch. You know, we lose some, you know, some giants, and we're looking around and we're like, oh wow, we got to kind of start this all over again. You know, in a sense. So we have to be firmly committed and intentional about working together within our generational spectrum. Firmly committed and intentional about that, because that's our key. That's the only key, because it ain't gonna happen with us. You know, so we talking about true liberation. We know where we are in our life. We understand this, but if we're not actively working towards a plan for the next generation and generation after that, we failed. I don't give a damn how many books we read and how much we know and how well we can speak. If we're not executing that fundamental process, we failed. Right? So again, just taking from our ancestors in the now, they were good with that. They're very clear on that. They're very intentional about that. This is why they work so hard. See, Europeans kind of think it was an egotistical thing. No, the Africans along the now was like, no, we need to make sure that the cats 3-4 generations from now see this and get inspired and stand up and keep this going. So they worked so hard to make sure that happened. And this is what we're doing here. So like I said, I didn't have a choice, because if you're really true about what you're doing and you see this, you jump all over it. That's why I said, don't worry about Felicia. She's going to jump all over this. We're down. We're committed to you, So Hapi's here. Anybody, from anything we can do to assist and be a part of what you guys are doing, we're already in.
Absolutely. We appreciate that, right?
Yes. Thank you for sharing, Brother Taaqiy. Hearing about how your early experiences matters to me, because I've been told my whole life that I came into this world asking questions. For instance, my mom says it, my nana says it, and my Barbara says it the loudest.
Why I gotta say it the loudest? But okay, you know what? Hey, we appreciate you, Raya. We appreciate Reya'Sekhmet, right?
For the moment I could talk, I want to know why and how. And what does that mean for us as a people? So when I hear you talk about your childhood, I'm learning from the spark that when the moment the curiosity started turning into purpose. Because I feel that same thing in myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I want to understand how someone like you followed that feeling all the way to where you work today and what you do today.
Wow, that's a really powerful question. Because you're right, it did start with curiosity. Curiosity was really a big part of it. And so, because it's, starts with you trying to acquire information and just looking around and trying to learn and know yourself and know thyself is the greatest thing. But at some point, I feel is when you get to a certain stage, if you will, and you look around you, you see where our people need help, where you can contribute. And if it's something that's really touched you in the heart, it's something I feel is going to be automatic for you, right? You're going to feel compelled. Like I said, you don't have a choice. You're going to feel compelled to want to share and want to, uplift and enlighten. And that's the journey. I could say that's what my journey has looked like thus far in terms of where I was early on, just reading and reading a lot of books, you know what I mean? And trying to acquire information. And the reading turned into when I got the means to travel. I mean, my first time in the now, I didn't go thinking I was going to be doing pilgrimages there with groups of people. I didn't see that, right? So this may help answer your question. I'm sorry, I'm a little all over the place right now because that question was
take your time.
I got to really think about that question for a minute. But 1999, spring of 1999, I go to Egypt to visit Kemet, right? And I tell my folks there's two different things. You have Egypt and you have Kemet. Kemet is inside of Egypt. When we're in Egypt, we have to search for Kemet. It's there, but it's two different cultural places and time, right? So and also say that the way Egyptology was formed was taking Kemet out of Africa and placing Egypt in the Middle East. So if we could just let that resonate for a minute. Now, when you go back to the point from curiosity to purpose is what I'm there in 1999, and I'm looking around, and just my friend and I, and we're walking, we're going to the different sites. And at this point, I was pretty familiar with some things because I was watching a lot of documentaries, so I knew pretty much what I was looking at. Mm-hmm. I couldn't read any Medu Neter, but I understood the monuments, Giza, Khufu, Saqqara, the main things, Karnak, Luxor. I was pretty familiar with these things. So we're going to all these different places, and one of the things I see is a lot of people, right? But I don't see a lot of Black people. And I'm starting to get more curious now into this. And I'm looking around and I see a lot of, East Asians, East Asians, a lot of Japanese, Chinese, a lot of Eastern, Western Europeans, but I don't see no non-Indigenous Black people. So I'm like, what's going on here? This is our civilization. We were descendants of the people in the Nile. Egypt is, Kemet is African, and I don't see the African people there. What's wrong with this picture? So now I'm like, you know what? I think we got to do something about this. We got to do something about this. So not too long after that, when I got home and I sat with it for a while, I was like, you know, we need to figure out a way to have people start making this journey. And at that time, you know, let me just step back. Let me go back for a second. There was some hesitation of me going initially because I wanted to go with someone like a Dr. Ben and others. But Dr. Ben at that point clearly had stopped doing tours. So I was like, okay, if I don't really have that, what's my next best thing? And my friend was like, hey, why don't you just go? And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. So when I got there and I started to see the lack of, again, Africans visiting, I was like, well, maybe that same thing I was feeling, others are feeling as well. Not necessarily want to go alone, want to go with someone who kind of could show them around, things like that. So I was like, okay, you know, just looking from left to right and not really seeing people around me doing it. I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and just do this. And I thought at that point of walking into purpose, because again, not really having a choice. When spirit wants you to do something, it doesn't give you a choice. It's just kind of like, this is what you got to do. And that's what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the beginning. The travel piece was the beginning, and travel led to film, right? Because every time I was someplace, I always had my cameras with me. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I know I needed to document what I was seeing.
Well, hold that thought right there. We're going to pin in it right there.
All right.
Because I got Reya'Sekhmet over here bumping me because she has a question for you. And
I'm sorry, I'm not, because I don't want to steal the thunder. But go ahead.
But before we get to that part of your journey, you know, I want to kind of bring it back just a little bit to the destruction of Black civilization, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a question.
Brother Taaqiy, I'm beginning to dive into the book, The Destruction of...
Beginning to what?
The book of Black Civilization, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. But I don't just want to read it, I want to study it. So what would you say would be a section for me to read?
Wait. Brother Taaqiy, before you answer that question, I'm going to let you think about that just for a hot second. I want Reya'Sekhmet to, I want you to give the family a little bit more context to what you're asking, right? You know, when you say the part that hits you the hardest, or what section that you should read, like what's the real question behind that? Break it down for the family so that everybody is clear as to what it is you actually wanting to ask.
You know, I have something I want to share with y'all. Just give me just 2 seconds, because you just sparked something.
No, yeah, go ahead. All right.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. It's just when y'all said that light bulb went off, I had to, you know, give my
you good. So basically, what I was asking Rhea to do is just kind of give a little bit more context to what she's asking. I know she asked what section would be good, but for the people that may listen to this down the road, I figured it'd be good for her to kind of give a little bit more to that, you know, some substance for the family, right?
Yeah. So family, this is what I'm really asking, is this. When someone reads The Destruction of Black Civilization, there's usually one moment or one truth that hits them so hard it changes how they see our history, our responsibility.
I agree.
So my question to you, Brother Taaqiy, is what was the part of the book that hit you the deepest? It shifted something inside you as a young African thinker.
Right. Okay. So, you know, it's interesting. We asked a question about curiosity to purpose. And I kind of gave you the 1999 version. And it's true. You know, that was a purpose. It was a bridge from curiosity to purpose that happened in 1999. But I got to take it back to 1988.
Okay. Are we going back?
About 11 years prior to that. And that's when I read Destruction of Black Civilization for the first time when I was 14, 1988. So that moment there from curiosity to purpose was just absorbing the spirit of the book, right? The title alone kind of may have you thinking, it may impact you negatively if you're reading Destruction of Black Civilization, because no one wants to really necessarily hear that. But when you read the book, one of the things that you see forward and constantly and consistently is the spirit of resistance, right? And that is the most powerful thing when you really, really read the book and understand. And it could have been, listen, Chancellor Williams did great work, but when I think about it, it's almost the spirit of resistance, maybe subtitle of it, because it speaks of all these African freedom fighters from the times of the Nile all the way to the times when the Europeans were coming towards the shores of West Africa, trying to encroach and formulating the transatlantic slave trade. So when we look in the Arabs and the conquering of East and West Africa, the emergence of Islam in Africa as well. So there was great resistance to that. It wasn't as if people just walked in and did certain things. People fought and they died for that. So at 14, after reading that book, I was able to garner something I didn't have prior to that, and that was Black heroes, right? So some of the things, like you talk about sections of the book. So these are the things that really, really caught my attention. And this is like one of the things here, and I probably should start with the other one. This is one of the images that I thought was so powerful when Chancellor illustrated Menace and his army conquering northern Egypt and uniting the First Kingdom. Like that resonated with me in such a way that I had someone years ago try to do a rendition or a drawing of it, because I was so inspired by that. I was so inspired by what Menace did. And not only him, but there was others, and like, Pianki in this image here, in the Napata Council, the War Council, fighting the Assyrians or reuniting ancient Kemet after the Third Intermediate Period. These were things that I was like, wow, these are the people I want to be like. So the first thing I did, going from curiosity to purpose, is I took the names of the people that inspired me. So my name's like Menace, Pianki, Calidosis, Kefra. You know what I mean? Those are the people that, in Kefra wasn't necessarily the military point, but just the insight and the foresight for carving, the way Chancellor explains it, carving the image of the Harem Akhet or the Sphinx in the way that it's announcing who they were, because they kind of force, again, that foresight that people will be questioning in it. People will be questioning, and we'll be debating about the racial ethnicity of the Nile. That will still be a conversation up until the point where you have in another, National Geographic putting out, a publication like this and titling it The Black Pharaohs, which implies that the other ones were not. This publication here is speaking of the 25th dynasty of ancient Kemet, or what they call a Kushite dynasty, but they refer to that as the Black Dynasty, which if you hear that, your mind only goes one place. If that's the Black Dynasty, and the other, 30 other dynasties had to be other than Black.
Right.
But we know that's not the case. But they knew that. Kefra and others knew that. And it was a artistic revolution to make sure that the noses was wide, the cheekbones were a certain way, and that they were depicted a certain way, because they knew that the world would try to do what they're doing now, and that's change the images. You know what I mean? So we have to be very clear on that. And again, from curiosity to purpose, I can say started with this book, but I say, Rhea, to answer your question, the entire book, because the entire book deals with resistance. The entire book deals with the undying spirit that we have as a people. People always question, particularly the African Americans, in who we are, as like all that we've been through. How do we keep rising constantly? How we're not in a worse situation than we're in now? How we always keep coming back over and over and over again? That's resilience. And that speaks to not only the resilience of our people, but speaks to the ecosystem, that speaks to everything that we have going on in our universe, that we're going to always rise. And when I, again, reading Destruction of Black Civilization, what I first saw was the spirit of resistance. And it touched me in such a way that I knew we had to get on this journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that image that someone recreated, that was powerful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they ain't give me enough ships.
Yeah.
I wanted more ships in the water, but you can see the suit here supposed to be in Venice and taking his army, and I was and it reads here, Ethiopian king of kings leading his army, his now fleet, to retake northern Ethiopia from the Asians. So that was and that's the caption from the book inside it. So this is about maybe almost 35 years old. This is one of my earlier pieces, but I loved it. But that image in the book just it caught me in a way, and I couldn't stop looking at it. And I was always like, this is it, and we had to get it recreated.
Yeah. You have a similar testimony, don't you? You should when you feeling the need, you should share it. But yeah.
Again, Brother Taaqiy, you have a powerful testimony. And hearing how you approach Chancellor Williams' book means a lot to me, because my journey started with books too. I mean, the first book that entered my life was Baba Kaba Combination Baka Stone for Children, an African star story. That made me want to know who we were before the world tried to rename us.
That is true.
And the second book was Ma'at Guiding Principles of Moral Living, Instructions for Children by Baba Taaqiy Grant. That book didn't just teach me balance, it taught me truth.
Yeah, because you fell in love with those 13 first. Yeah, out of the book. Yeah.
I can say those two books changed me. They made me want to study more, learn more, understand more, and I even got the chance to speak with both Baba Kaba and Baba Taaqiy. And then I got the opportunity of a lifetime where I was able to interview both of them right there. That made me feel responsible. But to share what I'm learning with other people, so they don't grow up confused about who they are. I say that because when I hear you talk about your books and the moments that woke you up, I understand that feeling.
I have to agree. It kind of reminds me a little bit, and I won't be long, for the sake of time. But this book right here, around that 1988, 89, was one of the first books that was handed to me that I was able to read. It's Resegregation of Mind, and it's by Brother Daryl Smith, Daryl 7X, as he was known at that time. But it talked about how they took the shackles off of our hands and our feet and put them on our mind. And he kind of gives some actionable items within there. So that was one of the first books, along, with Malcolm, the autobiography of Malcolm X and things of that nature. But from there, I was able to venture off into Dr. Ben's work, Dr. Clark's, Carruthers, so on and so forth. But, that's my shameless plug on the, my little journey to get there. But brother, instead of me asking what Chancellor Williams' book did for you, I want to ask, what was the moment that made you realize your life was no longer just about learning our history, but about the action of carrying it forward, right? And lead us into that spark that would one day become the Hapi movement, right?
Wow. Just in my life, I could say, just looking back, because sometimes you get to a moment you have to kind of look back and you see the different journeys you've been through. And at some point, maybe around 2001, I started to look back and say, wow, we've been through all these different journeys. And you see that the journeys were purposeful. Each step, each journey was a moment to get me to this point we are now, that I am now. And once I had the opportunity, and this is something that Kaba is saying, looking back so we can go forward, he talks about the slingshot a lot. The farther you pull back, the further ahead you go. And I started looking back at these little stations or stops, you know, along my development, I realized is like, wow, this has been something that's been going on, something I wasn't even aware of, because a lot of times, you know, spirit have you just doing things, you don't even know you're doing it and why you're doing it. But at some point you'll recognize as you get closer, get to a certain stage, like, okay, wow, I can pull back from this, and I can go back and the information and the different schools and different things I've been through to be able to say, hey, I stand in purpose. And like I said, just going back to the early 2000s and starting to walk with some of the great minds in our community. And one thing I could say is I loved being with Dr. Leonard Jeffries during those years, because it was anything that was going on in our community, he was there and I was there with him, you know, next to him. And I had the opportunity to, you know, sit with Asa and others. And, you know, like I said, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, the Clark House was still open. It was still functional, it's still open, but it was functional at the time. We had a lot of gatherings there, another community center or cluster, if you will, that we had, and everyone would just be there, you know. But it was very intimate, very small, so you had to be with the people who was with the people, you know, if that makes sense. So that was one of the opportunities, just being in that environment, realize, oh, this is purpose, this is something we should do. And the film piece, we were, like I said, we were doing trips already. We've been pretty much doing the organized trips since about 1999. But around 2003 was my first time visiting Upper Nubia, the Sudan region. And going there, again, video camera and still camera in my hand, just taking pictures and everything. Not with the intentions of making a film, but with the intentions of just, wow, I just want to be able to go back and look at this again on a personal level. Then I went back again the following year, 2004. And this time I brought Dr. J with me. And like Kemet, we were always in and out, up and down, but going into Kush was a little different for us, and visiting the three major civilization points there, Merowe, Napata, and Kerma. And I should have said that the other way around, because Kerma comes before Napata, and Napata comes before Merowe. But nonetheless, just being there and seeing the pyramids there, going and seeing the temples there, just seeing that aspect of the civilization, or has J. Carruthers once said, with him he was civilization re-emerging and rebuilding itself over and over and over again, which also talks about the spread of resistance. And seeing that there in ancient Kush was really powerful. But it wasn't until I came home maybe a year or so later, after that second trip, that I ran into some friends of mine, and they were into the film thing. And somehow or another, we got into a conversation about that. So I had back then everything was like on little mini DV tapes. Everything's digital now, but I had all these tapes and stuff. So we started looking at it and seeing what we could take from it and add to it to make the first film, which is Nubia, the Untold Story. Again, Spirit has you going places, doing things. I had no intentions on doing that. My intention was just to document our experience there, right? And I got to say that was the most powerful, well, so many powerful experiences. But, and no, I'm all over the place, and I hate being all over the place. Let me just take it back for a second. In between the first and second trip to the Sudan, there was a Meriwether conference in Paris. And all the top scholars from around the world was there. I just happened to be there. People were presenting on Kush, a lot of the scholars from the Sudan, the Europeans, things like that, who were doing the archaeological digs. And I just, again, happened to find myself in these places, in these, environments. And my hotel, inside the hotel, next to my room, was these two Sudanese scholars. And one of them is actually in the Nubia film. But we just happened to start talking. And I said, I was just in Sudan maybe a year or so prior to that. And they was like, oh, okay. And we started talking, and come to find out, we had a mutual person we knew. Now, this is my first time there. Small village in what they call Karima. Like, what's the odds of us having a mutual acquaintance? Like, I don't know. I wish someone could give me a mathematical answer to that in terms of what that looks like. But just understand, we're in Paris. it was, I don't know how much later. I don't remember what the Paris conference was. So I know it was between the first and second trip. So it was probably somewhere mid 2004.
Okay.
And I'm there, and we just so happened to talk about my experience there. And he's like, yeah, that's my friend. I'm like, how the hell do we know this same person? I only met one person in this village, because my friend who I was with there, he was from there, and he took me to his friend's house, who happens to be an acquaintance with the professor that was in Paris. Like, when stuff like that happens, now you got my attention, right? And that's kind of like where I was at that moment. I'm like, okay, Spirit, what are you telling me? I need to pay attention to things now. Because that acquaintance in Paris led to the second visit with Dr. J, and led to us seeing things we would not have necessarily saw, because he took us places, he showed us things, he opened up the storehouses and stuff where they were keeping things. You know what I'm saying? So Spirit was like, we want you to see this. We want you to see this, and we also want you to share it with other people. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that experience was like, wow. So, but that situation there, it repeated itself over and over and over again. And I give you many other stories like that. But that was definitely, for me, an outside testimony, just understanding where we are and what's going on at this moment. Because Spirit was definitely, it was and is still speaking. And it would show you things in that manner. Yeah,
no, that's powerful. And I apologize. I had to stand up and plug in the laptop. I didn't have the power cord plugged in. We were gonna lose you. Oh,
Brother Taaqiy, when it comes to our cat tours, you didn't just go to Kemet. You created a way for other people to go with you, and that's not a small thing to do.
no.
And I've come to understand that takes vision and leadership. So I'm curious, when you first started taking people back to Kemet, what was going through your mind? And Brother Taaqiy, not the clean, polished version, but the real moment you said, "Okay, I'm doing this." What did that feel like?
Yeah, see, we trying to ask those questions that you don't usually get asked, right? I told you we was gonna have a little twist to it.
Right. Yeah, I see. Got me digging kind of deep here.
We know you. We know you Superman, but we want the Clark Kent. Like, what was that? What was going on?
Let me give you the first thought and feeling. It was frightening. It was frightening because there was a lot of questions I had internally, and I didn't know a lot. It was my first time, so I was frightened, and I remember, here's one of those stories. I remember being like, oh wow, because like I said, Brother Watusi was there in a sense of like behind the scenes, and the people, there had to be a lot of trust involved. People trusted me in various different ways, with their lives, with their money. I had to trust people with the money, with our lives. There was so much happening there. And like I said, I remember being frightened. And there was a lot of anxiety leading up to it, but it really got high in the airport leaving JFK. And I remember feeling like overwhelmed, because again, this is the first with people. The first time was like just a friend and I, but this one was like a group of people. It wasn't big, and I appreciate Spirit for that, because they gave me what I could handle. Anything more than that would have been just too much. It was like, this is the number right here. And some of the people were actually friends and acquaintances, things like that. So it was very intimate, but it was the perfect group for the first time. And this is one of those moments where I said, looking back and seeing what happened and realizing that didn't happen. It wasn't by happenstance. That was very intentional, right? So again, we're in the terminal at the check-in counter, and I'm just like, wow, heart beating 1,000 miles a minute. And I'm just sitting there and I'm waiting, I'm thinking, I'm just like, my head, I'm all in, just like, just worried about everything. You can imagine, we're worried about it. So, like I said, I knew pretty much everybody. Not pretty much, I knew everyone. And there was one person, just the pretty much part, I didn't really know, but they came through Watusi, and they were a friend of his. But I knew the sister from that perspective. So I'm introducing people who didn't know each other. I'm introducing everyone, and I introduced her, and she didn't live in New York, by the way. She lived in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I'm introducing people, and there was a gentleman, older gentleman that was with us, who was just like he at the time he just retired from we worked together, but he just retired. But he was a close friend, very supportive. And I introduced them, and these two were childhood friends. Like, again, the odds. Like, they didn't know they were going on this trip together. They didn't see each other in over 30-some years.
Wow.
You know? And that moment for me was the moment. And I realized, like, don't worry. Don't be afraid. Don't. And a level of calmness came over, because it was like, yeah, don't worry about this. You'll be all right. And that was it. That's when, for me, Akhet Torch really kind of came together, because I realized I wasn't doing it alone. And I realized it was something that we had to do. It was something we have to do.
Yeah, it takes a village, right?
Yeah. So, but when, they're like, oh, yeah, and they were like, yeah, we grew up together. I was like, oh shit. I was like, wow, this is amazing. But again, this when you've been on the journey, there's tons of experiences like that. And when you pay attention to them, you understand the purpose of them. And you understand that, you're being spoken to. And once you're being spoken to, you understand how to listen and how to hear. And then you know what your next move is supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Brother Taaqiy, you're the executive producer of 3 powerful films like Nubia, The Untold Story, The Tekhen, Uncovering the Influence of Ancient Egypt, and then, of course, Hapi, which teaches us about the rule of economics and the rise of civilization. That's a lot of wisdom and a lot of responsibility. And I want to talk about those films. But for young people like me, it may be a lot to take in all at once. So for the long listeners becoming, I'm going to try to break up my questions so that way I can ask about each film separately. But first, I want to ask, when you look at those 3 films together, Nubia, The Tekhen, and Hapi, was there a rhyme or reason or order you released them in, or did that just happen by chance?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's interesting, but there is a continuation. There are 3 very different films, but there is one consistent theme throughout them, right? And starting from Nubia and going into the Tekhen and into Hapi, and the consistent theme there is the relationship between the kingdoms of the Nile. That is the key. And that, for me, is always the key. And the reason why it is so important, in my opinion, is because, again, if you read Destruction of Black Civilization, you see, Kemet turning from black to brown to what it is today. You see that intentionally happening. You see when you see today, you look at how the narrative around the relationship is always that there was this black group fighting this brown group, or vice versa, or this beige group fight. Very ambiguous when it comes to describing the ethnicity of ancient Kemet. But when you really dig deeper into the relationship between the kingdoms of the Nile, you understand that there was a very peaceful, harmonious relationship, right? Even when we look at the so-called the word Nubian, right? Nubian has become synonymous with the word black. So you have these subliminal messages as the Egyptians are fighting the Nubians. So in your mind, you have this ambiguous group fighting this black group, not understanding that the word Nubian or Nub is the word for gold in ancient Kemet, right? So when you get those things out your mind and understand that they had a harmonious relationship, a lot of times the relationship was based on trade and commerce. This is where the Hapi thing comes in, because they were working together in unison. There may have been periods where other groups from the West have migrated into the Nile and disturbed the flow of goods, who they had to fight, who they had contested relationships with. Yeah, those things happened. But when it comes down to the kingdom of Kerma and the kingdom of Yam and the Napatan phase, and by and large, if you put the the timeline of history, even going back to the Kush Winston burner, when you put all this together, you understand that they had a very peaceful working relationship with one another. And one of the things Chancellor says in that book, keep going back to that, is that it's never a situation of unity between them, but the question is who was going to rule once they became unified.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's one of the quotes in the book. So when you understand that, for me, it was like, Nubia started off with really telling that story. The Tekhen, uncovering the influence of ancient Egypt, we go into that story somewhat, right? And Hapi, for me, was the cornerstone of Hapi, dealt with, this different segments of Hapi, but putting it together, bridging it, because we had to figure out ways to take us from now to then and tell the story of the Hyksos and all this and that we're discussing, but in the Kermaway and all that stuff we talk about in the film. But that was the foundation. That was the heart of it. The heart of it came from that, and that's why we even called it Hapi. We called it Hapi because one of the things that they have in common, Kush and Kemet, is the river, the Hapi Atiru, the Nile River, right? That was the confluence, the thing that connected them together. So I wanted to speak of it in that manner and say, what is the thing that they have? The most thing they have in common is this thoroughfare of knowledge, wisdom, spirituality, commerce, trade, all the things that kind of happen along the banks of that river is what ties them together. So I called the film Hapi, way before we kind of got into the other stuff. In fact, Hapi really came on the heels of the Tekhen. The Tekhen was like 2009. So we started initially working on Hapi back then, had the name for it, and had at least the nucleus of it, which is speaking about the kingdoms of the now and their relationship to one another.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you answered that. So Reya'Sekhmet, I can scratch that question off your bullet point. Well, it's like
okay though.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. Sometimes the guest may lead into an answer that you may have a question for. So in host fashion, you move on, right? I'm sure you got another one.
Listen, and that happens to me all the time on Hapi. I have a list of questions on Hapi Talks. I have a list of questions, and I ask a question. Next thing you know, the second question is answered. Okay, I'm moving on to the third one. So yes, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, look, I'm sure you got another banger over there, right?
Yes, I do. Okay. I have a lot more. And Brother Taaqiy, I've been taught that the Tekhen is one of the most copied African symbols in the world, but most people don't even know it comes from us. What did you want our people to understand about our influence, our signs, and our legacy when you made this film?
Wow. So, listen, every time you ask the question, man, I gotta think. I gotta really put my thinking cap on, as they say. So
I mean, it was a beautiful film. While you thinking, I'll just kind of chime in real quick. I was able to get the film and Nubia, so I got the two, and we actually play it as a form of teaching in our institution at our Amut Institute for Ancestral Learning. So we use your material to showcase to our children and the students, just so that they can get a visual as to what we are talking about and what we're reading about. I mean, we are in Iowa, right? We're in the capital, Des Moines, Iowa, by way of Chicago, Illinois, right? But your information and material is desperately needed, to our brothers and sisters here in this corn state, right? Here, fun fact, and I'll land on this. There is more hogs in this state than there are people.
Yeah.
And so,
wow.
And so Black people in this state make up only 4% of the total population. So
you stole that from me.
Hey,
I said that a year ago.
Hey, you should be thankful. I still remember it, right?
You should remember when you copied.
It's a fun fact.
And you didn't address me.
Hey, I beat you to the punch, right? we just helping Brother Taaqiy buy a little time so he can get his thought together on that question you just asked him.
one of the things, just being on a, it's interesting because being on a journey throughout the world, like you said, the Tekhen is one of the most copied symbols in the world, and most of them weren't copied. Some of them are original pieces. They're not replicas, but they are original, and having been through several countries in Europe, seeing it for myself from London, Paris, Rome. There's more Tekhens in Rome, or it's how we say Tekhenu, which is a plural. There's more Tekhenu in Rome than it is in all of Egypt. But the ones, again, that are in Rome were taken from Kemet and placed there. We also have the original, not a replica, in New York City that was taken from Kemet and placed in New York, as well as Paris and in London. So just happened to be around and seeing these images and understanding, particularly going to a place like the Vatican City and seeing the Tekhen there in the heart of Christianity as its foundation, and understanding that African spirituality is the foundation for the world's religions. And looking at that, here's one of those moments where, not so much for Europeans, but for Africans, that we have to point out to them and say, hey, you see this right here. They're emulating you. They are copying you. And I'm going to share another little story with you. One of my trips, to the now, I was in a temple with a group, Flyest, which is dedicated to the energy of principle or set, the feminine principle, divine feminine or set. And we're in the temple, and we're in the Holy of Holies, and we're leaving, and we're exiting back out from the temple. And another group is coming in to that space because it's like a small room. And as I walk out, I'm in the back, I'm the last person out. The group comes in. I happen to turn and go back to get a picture of something. And it was a European lady, young lady, and she's kneeling and praying at the altar. I didn't have my camera ready. Normally I was really good. I was quick with the draw back then. And, I regret not taking that picture, because that picture illustrates a lot. And it illustrates civilization today. They will quietly worship you behind scenes, right? Whether it's in the Vatican, whether it's in Washington, D.C., they're quietly praising you, right? And one thing in the Tekhen, the Infidel, said, they're following you, but they have you following them. One of the Masonic temples on the door, it says the light comes from the east, but the Lord comes from the west. They're constantly looking at you saying, hey, we need to emulate them. But they have us under this spell, have us following them. You understand what I'm saying? So for Africans, we need to understand that their civilization is built on who we are. And as we have in various cities in Europe, the Black Madonna and Child, they understand that. They recognize that. They'll go to a place like Kemet, and for them it's a pilgrimage as well. And they'll go to these altars in these spaces where no one's around, and they're praying to the Black God, right? But the white folks, but the Black people, we're looking at this, and we don't see it. It's really, it's kind of in your face. It's like right there. And the Tekhen was such a powerful film because it really kind of underscored what that looks like. What that looks like. Even going into, we talk about this in Hapi, One World Trade Center. Being in New York, I was here. One of the most interesting things for me was the towers falling, because that was a big place for us as kids. We used to love going to the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers was it. It was so New York. You know what I mean? If you were a kid during that age going to the Twin, that was the thing for us. It was in the movies, King Kong, all the stuff like that. So it was like, it was get on the train and we're going down to the World Trade Center. That was a thing. Towers fell. There was much discussion around the new design. And what did they do? What did they wind up doing? They wound up designing it as a Tekhen. You know what I mean? Like you can't make this up. It's constant. They're constantly looking at our power and our magic. There's a magic that comes with Black folks. And a lot of that magic comes in the symbols and the images that we have. But they realize this, so they copy it and they imitate it. The sad part about it is we don't see our own power. And that's where
There
the
it
message
is.
in these films and other things that we do come from. We have to learn how to see the power in and what we've created, because it's powerful. Our ancestors didn't just put it up and just leave it there. It wasn't, it wasn't like, you know what I mean? There was some deep,
Right.
deep spiritual stuff that was going on with these monuments. So yeah, that's
Brother Taaqiy, I just want to say you have had so many powerful guests on your film, on your Happy Talks podcast, that trying to keep up with all of them feels like studying for something like a huge test. But one thing I've noticed about our people, whether it's our scholars, our warriors, our healers, is that our style is always on point. From our hair, our clothes, or jewelry. Nobody does it like us.
I was wondering where you was going with it.
And what is that supposed to mean?
Hey, you do your thing. I'm enjoying it.
And two people who stay on my radar are Professor James Small and Felicia Jehutimus. But let me be honest. If there was an award for the flyest outfits in African consciousness, I give it to Mfandishi.
You know what? Mfandishi be wearing
Facts.
some fly outfits, don't he?
facts.
Yeah.
And shout out to Mfandishi Jehutimus. We looking forward to having you on the show. Come bless us with your presence, Baba. You want to say something to Mfandishi, Baba Mfandishi?
Come on, we need you.
Yeah,
Listen,
come on to
we
J&J
can-
Life
I mean,
MA'AT
let me
Podcast.
see.
Top it up with Reya'Sekhmet.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that for you guys. We're gonna help sister make that happen. I'm sure he would love this. But let me say also something. There's a connection between Hapi Talks and the films.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the format is the same. The film, the cornerstone to the films are interviews, and we take parts of the interview, and those are your sound bites. So I may have 10 questions for guests. We have the camera set up, wide, close up, and we just kind of ask the questions. And from the answers to the questions and where we want to flow with certain topics, we'll take a piece of that interview, take a piece of that one, and we'll put a complete thought together.
Yeah.
So when I started doing the podcast, the show, we were already in full form, because doing the films and asking the questions was already kind of like, this is what we do naturally. So it's really one and the same almost. The Hapi Talks and creating film is one and the same, you're just interviewing someone. But the film, the talks we're not editing, it's complete answers, thoughts. You get the whole hour or so. But if I would take one of our interviews from the film and post it, that would actually be a Hapi Talks
Understood.
episode.
Understood.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you're gonna get with us. We try to. Only reason why like I told you before, when we're recording, we just put it out after the fact. That way we get an opportunity to put our stamp on it, our logo, and things of that nature, get some stuff embedded in the video.
Yeah.
But
Important
for the
stuff.
most part, you're getting everything that you're seeing, those that watch us is getting that. And so, with that, I just say, continue on, young grasshopper.
What?
You know what? That's Brother Taaqiy, that's one thing that we like to do on our show. We try to keep it serious with consciousness, but light enough to keep the attention span of not just our adult listeners, but those young, what we call the J&J Life MA'ATians becoming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there it is. There it
I
is.
remember that one.
Listen, that's the key. And we said that earlier, is the fact that we have to be intentional about bringing in young folks. And the beautiful thing about this is, I'm sure a lot of her peers will see this and be inspired by her and want to, like, hey, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to see her and they're going to be like, oh, she'll be their inspiration. She'll be a hero to them. And we don't realize the impact of that with just our generation. So we always should actively, do this, because she's connecting to a whole group of people that we can't touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So names are important, and I'm interested in your name now. Will you share with the family about your unique name, Taaqiy Grant, and what it means or what it means to you?
Yeah, I don't get to see that too often. We try to watch as many of your Hapi Talks and your, and all of that stuff. but we don't really get to see you breaking that name down for the family. So, this is just in our quest. I'm trying to find something that others have not really asked in that question or in the way that it's coming from Reya'Sekhmet.
Yeah. Wow. Taaqiy. Well, Taaqiy is an Arabic name. On a loose translation, it would translate as someone who fear God or God-fearing person. Like it's Islamic, and that's the name. Again, it's an attribute for someone who's just like, and it's not a fear out of. It's a fear out of reverence, a fear out of love, as a child should have for their father, things like that, or their parents. And is a name I adopted. I was about 16 when I started using that attribute, and it was interesting because, and I'm trying to figure out how deep we're going to go into this, but it was during that period I was on a journey, a spiritual journey, but it was also a reflection of who I was at the moment. So for me, Taaqiy has a dual meaning. One is the fear out of reverence, fear out of love. And for me, the other one is balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's another, and it's interesting because that's another one of the pillars of Hapi itself is balance, supreme balance. Everything in Hapi, if you look at the art, is balance. Masculine and feminine, balance on scales, balancing heaven and earth. All these things are in balance in Hapi,
right?
Or balance in Hapi. So Taaqiy, for me, is a representation of that, because it speaks to the journey at that time and what I was going through, and just trying to balance who I was and who I was becoming, because that is a part of who we are. And as I look at you guys and I see the balance, you mentioned earlier about the seriousness, but also the lightheartedness. There's a balance there, and it's a very necessary balance. And I think that's something that our people need to understand moving forward. And the part of the unity, like I said, of the pillar of Hapi, the other aspect of that would be, one of the other aspects of that is the balance and the importance of that. Just balancing things out. Because a lot of what you have in our community is an imbalance of things. And I think we need to get back to balancing our thoughts, our processes, our lives. And once we do that, we can move on and be more productive. So yeah, for me, I carry Taaqiy to this day because of the balance piece and understanding that's, what it's about, even understanding the balancing in your culture, your balancing economics. We're constantly balancing your spirituality, the balance of the work, your daily life stuff. Everything in our life, it's going to go back to that. Balancing relationships. You understand what I'm saying? And we talk about economics a lot in Hapi, and just thinking of, and I tell just one of the things I speak of a lot, the economics of between people. There's a constant give and take, if you will, or an exchange of goods that go on between people. And where there's an imbalance in those relationships, usually they fail. Be man, woman, friends, or what have you. Relationships are weakened when it's an imbalance, when people feel like they're getting cheated. It's not an even exchange. So we have to search for balance in everything, because that's what the important part of it is.
There it is, balance. That's the key takeaway, right? There it is. There it is. Key word.
I want to ask you something I think is important for the young Ma'atians becoming. Because we see the finished films, we see the polished work, but we don't always get to see the human moments behind the secret or the scenes. So I want to know, while you're filming in Kemet or traveling or building these documentaries, did you have any funny bloopers? Like any moments or things that go, like, say my laugh at later?
Well, there are always moments like that. One moment, the Brother C, he talks about constantly. We were in Kemet, I think it was the middle of June, but it was hot.
Yeah.
It was hot. It was hot. And there's a difference in climates when you leave Cairo and you go to Upper Egypt. Cairo is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. We see New York. New York is like 9 million people. Like, that's a lot to us, right? It's like 20 million cats in Cairo. There's a lot of people there. You know what I'm saying? The restrictions on pollution, it's not what they are here. In other words, vehicles, a lot of smoke, a lot of smog. Everyone smokes cigarettes. So what you have there is this haze because of that in Cairo. So it's warm, but it won't be super hot. But the minute you leave Cairo and you start heading south, you know you're in Egypt now, because that's when it gets hot, especially in the summertime. You know, get about 115 degrees, it gets really, really hot. And it's all...
You say 115?
Yes, and you're in the desert, so it's all heat. There's no humidity. It's hot. Summertime, hot. People actually, you know, I generally try to stay away from summer trips in Egypt because they're hot, and the heat can become a distraction. So we were there filming during this period, kind of late spring, early summer, and we were on this rooftop, and we had the former palace behind us. It was in the shot. The heat was beating down on my feet so hard, I started jumping up and down. It was like burning through my shoe, and it was just like, I had to cut and kind of take it over and do it again, because I couldn't take it. And it was seeing on Hapi when I'm standing on the roof. It was really, really, I don't know if I ever experienced anything like that before, but it was hot. And I remember he always laughs about that. But the way I was standing, it was like it was like somebody had a magnifying glass or something on my shoes. But
was you wearing some Moses sandals or something?
Well, no. We'll play around Egypt like that. But yeah, but it really felt like it was a magnifying glass, and it was like burning right through it. Man, that was some real serious heat.
Wow. You know what? I'm curious to know what made you want to ask for a blooper question, Reya'Sekhmet. I'm curious to know, like, the 9-year-old self, the 9-year-old me wants to know where that came from.
I asked that question because sometimes some people like me look at leaders and think they're perfect. But I know even the greatest builders have moments where things can get messy or confusing or just plain funny, right? So I thought it would be great for the family to know that even the ones we look up to are human.
That's facts. So yeah.
That's funny. I was thinking about that the other day, and I think that would save us from a lot. People would understand that looking into it. And, you know, because things happen, and sometimes I feel when we find out that people are human, we get sidetracked from what the true purpose and mission is. But if you go into that, understand that people are human, it helps keeps us grounded. And I think that's the key here is staying grounded in understanding that, yeah, we're...
No, we get it.
Yes.
We get it. I mean, I think it's only fair, though, that Reya'Sekhmet shares one of her bloopers. I mean, we have many of them, so at least on the podcast and behind the scenes. Won't you share a blooper of yours? You know, I think that's only fair, right?
How about I ask you a question? How is it that every time I ask a question, you turn the question on me?
I think it's...
The question to me.
I think that we got the good cop, bad cop thing going on. So I'm just being that person right now.
Which cop are you?
I don't even know no more. But no, I just think that it'd be a good idea. Why don't you share one of your bloopers with the family? Can you think of any? If not, we can keep it moving.
I got an idea.
You got something?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I figured you would.
And I want to be fair because I just asked you about your bloopers, so I should probably show on my dad. I just thought about it. I'm only 9, but trust me, I've already had some moments where things went way left. Like one time,
Definitely.
I was teaching a class at the Mood Institute about what a Negro peeing is. I was trying to sound real smooth or real serious, right? But I mixed up my words and said a Negro peeing is someone who, and then the whole class froze, and then everyone started laughing because even though it came out wrong, it still kind of makes sense.
It did make sense, but you said you were teaching the class about a Negro peeing. What's a Negro peeing? Not a Negro peeing, but what's a Negro peeing? Just for the family that may not know. What's a Negro peeing?
A person that follows a different track.
Than what track we're on? Well, tell Brother Taaqiy who would be an example of a Negro pen that you know of.
Oh, I got an idea. Jesse Lee Peterson.
Well, there it is. There it is. And that's a great transition, into this next segment, Brother Taaqiy. And as we round out our discussion, this is a great transition into the Sekhmet zone. This is where Reya'Sekhmet does her thing. So, I'm going to turn it back over to Reya'Sekhmet.
Okay, it's time for a question from the Sekhmet zone. This is where we're going to ask you a fun live question. Brother Taaqiy, you traveled the Hapi, you walked along Kemet, and from my young Ma'at becoming. I'm talking about what people call now Egypt and the Nile Valley River. But Taaqiy, you walked through temples, you interviewed legends like Professor James Small, Kaba Kamene, Anthony Shijuhuti, Miss Queen Afua, and the list goes on, right? But basically, you've been in the VIP section of African Center Consciousness.
True.
So here's my question. If you could assemble and film or document a super crew of 5 beings to help the African village in this country remember our greatness, our economics, and how to move on one accord, who would your top 5 be and why? Oh, and Brother Taaqiy, there's a caveat.
I knew something was coming. I knew it was coming.
Your lineup must include 1 Netaru, 1 ancestor, and 3 living warrior scholars. So with that, who makes your divine starting 5?
Oh man. Unnatural. Well, listen, I gotta go with Hapi as the natural, right? Start there. Why? As I delve deeper and deeper to what Hapi is and the Hapi movement itself, I realized there's real power and energy behind Hapi. And it's something that I'm studying and understand what those attributes and characteristics are. And we talked about unity. We talked about balance. Another one is abundance, right? There's an abundance there that we need to step into as a people. We live in a spirit of lack. We live in a spirit of survival mode. We need to step out of that and step into the spirit of abundance. And we think of ancient Kemet, it being the world's first great mega economy, came on the spirit. It came through the spirit of Hapi. When you look at the glyph of Hapi, you see that. You see the abundance, you see the balance, you see the unity. Mm-hmm. All those things were there and very present, right? And also the 4th one, for me, would be the resilience, the resurrection. Talk about the flood and the destruction of the flood. And once the flood waters receded, life came forward again, right? And that's that reemergence of life constantly over and over and over again. And this is another thing that has to be studied, because that speaks to the intergenerational thing once again. So the message was clear. It was there for us, right? It was there. It was there right in front of our faces in terms of who we are, what we need to do, and what we need. So Hapi would be the nature, right? Ancestor. Shucks. This
is where it gets tough.
Yeah, this one gets a little tough because damn, that list is huge. Does it have to be a contemporary ancestor? It could be someone from the ancient past. How?
I would take it. What ancestor is the ancestor, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Your choice. You can only choose however many Reya'Sekhmet said.
1 ancestor.
One ancestor. So many. So I'm gonna go with one of my favorites. And again, there's so many I can choose from. But one of my many favorites is someone who they call Thutmose III, the Juthimes III. And the reason why I choose him is because he was such a strategist and a tactician.
Okay.
And I think in a day like today, we need a mind like that. We need someone who understands strategy. And even to the point where he was such a great strategist, even to the point where his tactics are still studied today by military academies like West Point and other institutions. His ability to win decisive battle after battle after battle can't be overstated. So, not even on the military standpoint, but also his diplomatic standpoint as well. He was a great man, great thinker, and he came up in tradition as well. Mm-hmm. And that's the key piece. His his grandfather, his grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandfathers, people like that came out of the Hyksos occupation. So he grew up in the tradition of looking at his forefathers as being great people and want to follow in his footsteps. So again, his is intergenerational thing going on again. So he would be the ancestor. 3, I would say that Dr. Claude Anderson would be at the top for helping us strategize like economics. I think he's probably, there's so many, there's quite a few there, but I would take him as the economist. I got 2 more. Let me see. You know, I'm probably going to go with Infodici, because when it comes down to learning Metanetia and just understanding our culture, you know, culture is our medicine. That's one of his taglines, culture is our medicine. So, but just fundamentally, just getting the nuances. I'll give you an example. I heard he was on what was he? He was talking in our interview recently, but he's said this a million times in class. The word for wife in the language is Hemet, right? Okay. And when you draw Hemet in Metanetia, they're replicating a well. Now, when you look at that and understand where the people were at that time in virtually a desert, will make you understand the importance of a well. Now, when you attach that with the importance of your wife to who you are, it gives you real powerful, you know what I'm saying? There's some powerful connections there. And you only learn that when you learn the language. Yeah. So that's something for me that is super important. And we talk about this a lot in terms of getting more people interested in learning the language, understanding the vitality and the importance of it. I see that for a lot of people, it may not be practical because they don't really have much use for it. But if you're really getting deep into who you are, you have to study the language. So I'll put Infodici there, Dr. Claude Anderson. One more.
You got this.
Shucks. One more.
That's like blowing up.
And I'm gonna say Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Okay. I'm gonna say Dr. Leonard Jeffries, because Dr. Leonard Jeffries, you know, and at the time we met, you know, I was already in my journey, like I stated before. So I was familiar with people. I was, you know, in certain groups and so forth. So I was able to kind of discern real from fake, right? He's one of the most, I'm gonna say it this way, it's not gonna sound really eloquent, but he's one of the most realest African people I've met. You know what I'm saying? Because he truly believes in this. Like, it's in his heart. Like, he walked the walk and talk. It's so, he's that person, he embodies it. And, you know, like I said, 6 months, I didn't think they were gonna remember. I didn't remember. But because of who he is, what he stands for, and in his undying belief in the purpose, like when you got a cat like that in your 5, the dream team, you know, that's the person you need. You need someone who's really, really going to anchor it down and really, like, you know, some people are kind of surface, you know, it's more exterior, dashikis, unks, trinkets, but they don't have it inside. Right. He would be a person I would say is like, yeah, he walks and talks this, and he understands the importance of working with the younger generation. And like, he was very intentional about, you know, who I was and moving to certain spaces and introducing me to certain people. So yeah, you can't go wrong with a cat like that.
Absolutely. Well, there it is. He gave you his starting 5. Why don't you share with Brother Taaqiy and the family, for that matter, who you got?
You see what I'm talking about? You always do this.
Yeah, don't you like it?
No.
Yeah. Share with the family who you got.
Okay. I just want to say, this ain't fair.
What do you mean? You created the rule, right? You created it. What you got?
There's too many powerful elders and warrior scholars and divine beings who deserve to be on this list. But Brother Taaqiy, if someone were to ask me this question again next year, for example, you.
Okay, I feel you.
This might be even longer, and my brain might explode trying to choose. But since we're in the segment zone, and since you gave your 5, here's my starting lineup. So the 5 beings I would choose to help our people remember who we are and walk in Ma'at. Again, first will be the ancestor Dr. Barbara Sizemore, because she fought for Black children when the system tried to bury us, the children. I had come to know she understood that education is a weapon and a shield, and I believe her spirit would keep us focused on the next generation and the responsibility we have to them. And then there's Baba James Small and Lady Hutimus and Baba Kappa Kamane, because they teach us how to remember. They teach us make history fun and feel alive. And truth be told, they connect the dots across time, space, and consciousness in a way that makes you proud to be African. And then I have to go with Baba Amwali Mabaruti, Baba Atushikari, and Takaka Kilimanjaro, because those warrior scholars gives us unapologetic structure, discipline, and clarity. And from my study of their works, they teach. Why are you shaking your head?
That's more than 5.
Okay, well that's okay because I created the rule, which means I can do
You gotta be
whatever I
over here
want.
counting, but go ahead. Do your thing. It's your.
It's really 6. It's over. And from my studies of their works, they teach us how to build ourselves from the inside out and how to protect our minds from confusion and chaos.
That's facts.
Did I miss the Netra?
What?
How you rounding out your squad?
It's supposed to be a Netra in there also, right? A Netra.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
If
But
with the
she
Netra,
off an all-star team so far. Who you got at your Netra? How you rounding it out?
I'll round out with my squad with Reya'Sekhmet because she is courage, protection, and truth, and I literally have her in my name.
Okay.
I know my generation needs her energy to remember our power more than ever. So that's my squad. My rules, my way.
I feel you, Reya'Sekhmet. I feel you, you know.
Yeah. How about you give your line?
Oh, you don't want my lineup. But I'm gonna go with the same. But my Netra would be the creator. I'm going with Ra.
You have it in your name too?
Yeah, there it is.
But Brother Taaqiy, my Baba Rastar has explained to me about the word legacy. And family legacy is the living impact of what you build, teach, and protect, carried by forward generations. So now I know legacy is not about fame, but more about the impact of your works. I've watched from afar, at least from watching your Hapi Talks episodes, but your work has shaped how people talk about love, pain, and accountability. So when you think about your legacy, what do you hope your work leaves behind? Because I've also been taught that you can't build a strong community with emotionally weak people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah, the strength piece, emotional intelligence is key. And, I got to say, shout out to Sister Felicia. She's one of the strongest people I know. And, like, she's a soldier, and like rain, snow, sleet, shine, just always just ready. So those are the type of people you talking about starting 5. When I look at duplicating what we're doing in Hapi and people we know we need around us, people who understand purpose and mission first, right? It's always bigger than you. And a lot of times it's very difficult for us to separate ourselves from this. Because if we do, and we put that first, and put God first, we'll succeed. And that sounds very cliche, I understand that. But it's very difficult when, this is where the confusion kind of comes in. When I say confusion in the sense that having us in survival mode. Far too many of us are trying to figure it out in this space. And when you're trying to figure it out in this space, it makes it, almost impossible for you to create. And that was one of the things that, I actually have it right here in front of me. That was one of the things that George M. James emphasized and illustrated so well in Stolen Legacy, where he challenged the Greek notion of creating civilization, that the fact that they were always constantly at war and looking for food, right? one thing about ancient Kemet, the builders of the pyramids built when they couldn't farm. So when the floodwaters impacted the riverbanks or the floodplain, which was the farmland, they left their farms and they went to the what they would call the national building projects, and they would participate in those projects, not worrying about food and anything like that because it was already there. Everything for their daily lives was being taken care of. That gives you the ability to focus on creativity, not worrying about where my next meal is coming from. Because if you're worrying about that, or worried about paying bills and all these other things and trying to make money, it's hard to be creative. And that's what we need to lean more into, is situations or environments where we can be creative, environments wherein we're not worried about the day-to-day activities of life, because that's the only way we're going to rise to that space again. But the confusion, like I said, comes in as he constantly, our oppressors have us in what we call survival mode. So we need to step out of that and step into the spirit of Hapi, step into abundance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, will you share with the family, a little bit about the roles and contributions of Sister Felicia and Brother Hassan, who helped shape the message?
So, the roles and responsibility for us is left brain, right brain, logic and creativity. Thoughts, organization of those thoughts, or execution of those thoughts. So we live in the spirit of nature, in the sense that a lot of our relationships is based on, like Jehuti and Ma'at, that divine relationship. Jehuti is the mind, the creative force. All things in life are created from the mind. Ma'at helps put those thoughts into place and organizes them so that the universe can exist. That's, in a sense, what Hapi looks like. If I kind of, take it cosmically for a second. But like I said, just on a fundamental level, it's, it's like next man up, do what we got to do, roll your sleeves up and dig. I often say with Hapi, everything we get is out of the mud. It's real, right? It's real in the sense that Hapi's built on relationships. Hapi's built on working together, establishing alliance with other people, other groups, or other organizations, and seeing wherein we can collude and work together. That's the important piece, right?
Yeah.
And Felicia and I, and Hassan as well, are really good at relationship building. That's our superpower. And one of the things which is always interesting, which in the beginning, kind of took us back a little bit, but in a positive way, was when anyone reached out to us. They either got a phone call, we answer the phone, we respond, because that's what we do. People are not used to that, and they would always be like, "Damn, I didn't expect you to answer the phone," or "I didn't expect to hear back from you," or anything like that. But if you send us a message, we try to get back to people. If you have an issue with anything, a shirt not arriving, we try to get back to you. We were early in our early stages. We were doing the screenings, the film screenings. A lot of them were, not a lot of them, the issue ones for maybe about a year were all online because of COVID. There was always a technical issue someone had that we would call and troubleshoot. People were like,
right.
trying to watch it. They're like, "I got Taaqiy uniform." And it was like kind of tripped them out a little bit, because they didn't, they were not expecting for me or her to call and be like, "Hey, okay, do this to your screen, do that, see that app or whatever like that." And that was a big thing. So we keep that because we understand, like, listen, this is what I talk about getting out of the mud, because each person that we engage with individually is someone that now becomes a part of what we're doing. Because it's real love there. People, that's the part that matters the most, is us being together, the community. And that's what the Hapi Movement is. It's a community. And that community is only built person to person, so yeah, that's and we're all, that's who we are. at the core, we're that person. We're all the same in that sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Family.
You want to shout out to Sister Felicia and Brother Hassan again? You want to, pitch your plug?
How about sis? We've been doing less talking. How about you do it this time?
Sister Felicia, Brother Hassan, it will be an honor to have you two bless us and with your presence on the J&J Life MA'AT Podcast. We will even give you that money rub, right? But yeah, why don't you
Family, before we get out of here, I want to let you all know I wrote a book. It's called The Magical Adventures of Ralina. Book 1, Rise of the Flame. My book is about a girl named Ralina. She got the instincts of a wolf, like superheroing and strength, because Ra gives her the gift to channel the warrior energy of Sekhmet and Bastet, and the ability to move between realms using her Ankh. She goes on this adventure with her baby sister Katrina, and together they ride a mystical train to the lands of Kemet and Kush. It's an African-centered tale of applying the principles of Ma'at, and I wrote it with the support of my Baba Asar. It's on sale now in paperback, hardcover, and as an ebook. You can go over to Amazon.com right now, type my name in the search bar, get your copy today. You can also go to my website, which is www.Reya'Sekhmet.com, to get your autographed copy. And Brother Taaqiy, there's one more thing I want to share on why I wrote my book and why the Ralina series even exists. And that is Sankofa, the idea of going back to get what was lost. It was one of the most important pieces I wanted to put into the story, because I started learning about Ma'at, Sekhmet, Cleopatra, Arsinoe, and Shabaka, and Hatshepsut. I realized our people can't move forward if we don't remember who we were. And a lot of kids my age don't get taught that early. So in the Ralina series, I wanted Sankofa to be a living thing, not just a word or a bird symbol, but a feeling and a reminder.
Yeah, and that reminds me of when we were talking with Baba Kaba and he was sharing about Sankofa, and going back and get it, right? And she took that. Matter of fact, you talked to Baba Kaba. She was 6, I have to, keep emphasizing that because, he used to say when a child actually comes into consciousness, it's around 4. So when he was able to have an opportunity to talk to her, him and Takai and others, they recognized it right away. They seen what we saw early on. And so when he was explaining to her about Sankofa, she just took it and ran with it. And she ran so far that she done wrote a couple of books, got a couple of picture books here. And she wrote a novella based off of those picture books. And we get a lot of people asking, well, we got the book, but we just want to know because some of the words and how she's articulating, it seems a little bit more scholarly than her age. And I'm like, well, first of all, you are looking at the age and not at the consciousness and information that she's putting out there. And so I have to go, and we share this piece of her work, is that she started writing this book when she was 6 years old. So what we did was, and everybody like, she was actually writing, and it's like she's 6, so she's learning how to write. But what I did was, she kept telling this same story over and over. I took my camera out and my phone, and I just started recording her. So I just recorded her telling the story, and I took the transcript off of that, and we created the book. So it's still her words, and it's her form of writing back then, but now she's so far advanced that writing or being audible with it is second nature. So yeah, man, she's into her 3rd book now that she's writing, and that'll come out the end of this year. So hats off to you again, Reya'Sekhmet. You doing your thing.
We there's so many things going through my head right now, but we got to figure out a way how to support that and support you guys, and have a few things we could discuss, off camera, but want to make sure this information gets out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And brother, we definitely got to get you and the Hapi family to this side of the Mississippi, because like I said, Des Moines needs you all, my brother. You know, so is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you want to talk about? And is there anything coming up for you in the near future that the family should know about? Speaking engagements, new documentaries, stuff like that. Basically,
Oh man, we listen. You know, well. One thing we have is our um, Happy in Africa tour. That's this summer, August 20th to August 30th. It's going to be 3 countries. We're still working out some of the details of that. But people who are interested in signing up, they can go to akhettours.com and register. AKHETTOURS. We do have some huge announcements coming up, probably in the next few weeks. And we're going to circle back to this discussion with someone from Hapi soon. And when at that point, hopefully it's time, we can make that big announcement. I will say it has something to do with your area, kind of, sort of, in your region. So still working at the details of that. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. Yeah, so yeah, it's still it's got a couple little small things putting together, but it's coming together, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
We're excited about it, and it's going to be legendary, memorable. People are going to be talking about it for generations to come.
Oh, see, so, now you got us doing that money rub again, right?
yeah. So it's one of those things. It's like, you know, it's yeah. So we're excited about it, and we're looking forward. I got the little Wonder Twin fist thing going on there, but no, we covered everything, and I just happen to say, listen, I'm amazed and I'm honored to be here. That's one of the biggest things, the word honored, and this is such a uplifting and how can I say this also, you know, very hopeful, you know, experience. This experience gives me personally a lot of hope that our future is bright with people like young Reya'Sekhmet, and knowing that she's coming up behind us, and there's others that she will inspire to come up behind us as well. So, you know, we need to lean more into that, get more into figuring out what that looks like and developing that. So this is definitely a great start, and thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to working with you.
Absolutely.
Look, family. And for those of you who still play on words, when we use the term African, here we're talking about black people. So whether you use the term Kushite, African, African American, Moor, Hebrew, 5%, or however you identify with your blackness in and around the diaspora, I want you to know we as a people have some serious work to do. And though we know the Creator has many names, we're witnessing a ritual of detachment. It doesn't matter whether they say God, Allah, Yahweh, or Amara. As soon as someone opens up their mouth to you and says, God will fight my battles, or God will work it out, they have declared you irrelevant. And right then, you're supposed to kick their butt out of any position of leadership in your society, because we have to liberate ourselves. No one's coming to save us or teach us the truth about who we are.
That's why we got Brother Taaqiy and the Hapi Movement doing their thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we promote that, you know. So, yeah, you know. Again, hats off to Brother Taaqiy and the Hapi Movement. Hats off to you, Reya'Sekhmet, for doing your thing.
With that said, we want to give you the final words to close out today's discussion. The floor is yours, Brother Taaqiy.
Yeah, like I said, you know, it's beautiful working with you guys, and you know, understanding purpose and working in spirit and in conjunction with it. We are who we've been looking for. We are our own saviors. We must realize that, must recognize that, but we also must realize and recognize that there are unseen forces that will work with us, and we must must combine with those forces to work together to make this happen, because this is a spiritual battle. As much as we think it's physical, we must realize that it's a spiritual battle, and we are spirit having a human experience. So once we understand that and get that going, we'll be victorious. you know, because those two things have to kind of work in harmony again, you know, the balance between spirit and the flesh. It has to be a balance. Can't be overly one side of anything, especially in this world. If we can figure out ways how to work with that force and combine it with what we're doing, you know, all our successful thinkers, strategists, all had that type of connection. You know, there was definitely a connection with spirit in them and telling them kind of like directing them where they should go, what they should do, and just listening and staying still, being quiet and understanding what you should do. You know, kind of silencing the noise. So yeah, we just have to, like, again, we're going to close out with balance, because that's what it is. Close out with balance. All right. So listen, I appreciate you guys so much, and thank you for again inviting me. And we look forward to working with you in the future. And we'll work on getting Infudishi. And like I said, don't worry about Sister Felicia. That's a done deal. But we'll talk to Infudishi, and you know, connect you so you can speak to him, and this way y'all can schedule the interview.
There it is.
There you have it, family. Until next time, please absolutely devour the like button and subscribe. Sacrifice and pay the price. Be for whole day, family. Reya'Sekhmet is out.
Peace and love is the key. Ma'at represents the essence of truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, and humanitarian reciprocity and righteousness.
J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast. J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast. The J&J LIFE MA'AT Podcast was created to give the family a place and platform to embrace their spiritual awakening and consciousness. J&J LIFE MA'AT is dedicated to showcasing the beauty of our culture, educating our people, and those that want to learn this work.
Smash that like button. Peace and love is Nikki.